just record it. And that means that this will just be pointing and recording, and she can come in. You won't see it necessarily, but have you got slides or things that you need up here?
Yeah,
but you're going to put through.
I was going to just put it on there, but I can connect it to here if that's easier.
That's probably just as easy, but then poor old Amanda, if she comes in, won't see it. But that doesn't matter. So
if we put it up there, can we share it in the room there? Yeah, we can just put it up there.
Can you put it up there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you know how to find it, just put it up there. Don't worry about that screen. Just go to another screen or open another window. You've got one too. Will you be able to?
Not that sophisticated. I can actually. I've emailed it to myself.
Oh, good. So you can open it from this computer.
Yeah.
All right. So good.
All
right. I'll just get started. We've got Megan and Lisa talking about connectivism, I think, first, and then a little bit about games-based learning, which is, in my mind, very related, but we'll see what other people think. Can I ask, and I know that this is kind of a deep giveaway question, other people may actually come in online, I'm hoping Amanda is, but other people may also want to give me the go-ahead to do this. Your assignment is due this Friday. That's
the United States was founded in 1950 by President.
I hate it. Does it every time.
That's right.
Sorry.
It's a weird day for you to submit an assignment, although it's in the week and it's sort of positive in some respects, and people are actually hopefully working towards that day. But what I was thinking, if we all vote and agree on this, but if you don't agree, then we won't do it, to submit on Monday, that's the day before our next class, it gives you the weekend to finish it off. Now, there's a couple of days that people might have misread, because I actually was taking the dates from last year, and the date was actually wrong. Even last year, it was 2 days before rather than 1 day before, or 1 day after rather than 1 day before. Anyway, it looks like Nick normally has it on the Monday of the week, not on the Friday of the week, which is the one that I chose. So it seems to me logical to give you the weekend, although that destroys your weekend if you're still writing. Some people don't like that. They like to work towards the date they were originally working towards. So I'm putting it to a democratic vote. Who would like to have Monday as the day that you submit? Jan, not Friday.
Yeah, I'm not here Monday.
Monday? Is anyone objecting to that date? Yes. You're objecting. This is obnoxious, and you don't have to even submit. So can I haven't changed the date on the website because I just wanted to check whether people were okay with that. I'm going to give you till Monday. That's mean you can submit on Friday if you want. The funny thing is I haven't fixed the submission in Trinity yet, so I have to fix that, and that gives me until Monday to fix it. So if you try and submit now, tonight or tomorrow, it's probably not going to work, or maybe tomorrow it will.
It does work.
But it goes to the wrong place.
No, you can still submit it.
Okay.
And you can still get your Turnitin calculations from it.
Oh, good.
But you can always override it until the due date.
That's right, you can. Yeah. So if you have already submitted, please resubmit after, not even after tomorrow, after the next day, because apparently I, again, copied the Turnitin address from the previous website, which is what I thought you did. Apparently that means it just goes logs into last year's submission assignments. Although it does actually check it does everything probably right.
But it's last year.
It's last year's. So because I had to register with you for this year, I have to actually change the submission, and that gives me a couple more days to make sure everything works, and that's all fine. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to change the date on the website. So if you see or speak to anyone that's involved in the course, we'll happily put up an announcement into the subject area, so people do actually know that it is a little bit later than the natural Friday.
How strict you with word count?
I'm reasonably open. I'm not going to actually do any penalties for, but I'm going to perhaps if it's way over, I may stop reading and just tell you that I stop reading at a certain point.
Okay.
So I won't penalise you if you do that kind of thing, but we have to make sure that you've got your references at the end. They don't count in terms of work done, but make sure all of that's done. I mean, if it was way under the 1500 again, I might say something, but you probably still get some kind of grade for it. But it's not a penalty, therefore. What?
Do we need to just cover page?
No, you don't need a cover page. When you put it in, turn it in sort of writes the cover page for me, and I get all of that. So you need to submit it to turn it in. You can't put it in on a cover page. So that's okay. And can I just, before I forget to do this, next week no one has put their name down for taking the class, which probably is because the relaxing time after submitting on the Friday, or people who want to do any preparation for reading. It is on learning design and social networks. Sort of may not be relevant to the areas people are writing about, so maybe that's another reason not to do it. If you don't do it, someone has put their hand up by early this week. I'm going to do it. So just have to put up with me running the class. Unless someone is really, I think everyone here is already done something. Yes. Maybe a couple of people haven't actually put their names down. That's what I was thinking. Maybe it's an opportunity, probably pretty interesting, reasonably kind of useful seminar readings. All right, I'm going to hand over to me and find out how she went.
Yes, I will find that out too. Yep. So I am doing connectivism as the topic. Just a little disclaimer, I tried to use PowerStream as the application for my presentation. I don't know if any of you guys have tried to use that before. It's kind of good, kind of really frustrating. So excuse me if I accidentally jump forward the slide, things like that, because it's a little bit hairy like that. So yeah, there we go. Straight away, it's launched a double slide over. So just gonna okay. So essentially, connectivism is a proposed theory. So I wouldn't call it a theory as such yet because it's only been around since about 2005. So it hasn't gone through the kind of rigor that a lot of other theories have gone for. Some people have suggested that connectivism is a model, so it's a way that you can structure learning activities. Some have suggested it can become a theory. Others have said it's just kind of a nice idea. So there's still a bit of debate around connectivism as a learning theory as such, but it does suggest a number of things based on technology and the internet, such as the way that we access information and share knowledge has changed. There are a lot more learning opportunities available to people, and thanks to the rise of MOOCs. If you don't know what a MOOC is, it's a massive open online course, so it's a free course offered by universities across the world. Lots of really high-ranking universities or educational institutions offer MOOCs. Also, a lot of private educational providers or websites. You can do courses in coding or other things like that. So learning is focused on the question of how to gain further information, rather how much knowledge one has. So the idea about being able to find different opinions and different information is really key, rather than how much you can kind of just bank up and learn. So your connections, your social connections can really, and technology can amplify your ability to gain knowledge. So kind of connections are power in that sense. And information is always changing. So the internet means we have access to lots and lots of new information. And so skills at assessing and understanding information really quickly are key. Connectivism also states that learning and knowledge rests in diversity of opinions, that learning is a process of connecting information sources and communities, that learning can reside in non-human appliances, or so learning can reside in technology in some ways. Capacity to know is more critical than what is currently known. Nurturing and maintaining connections are needed to facilitate continual learning. So there's lots of kind of new ideas about learning that do build on, I guess, more traditional constructivist approaches, but there's a lot of more technology-based ideas there around connectivism. So, this is what I mean, it skipped ahead. So, some other ideas that I had about connectivism, has anyone heard of active network theory? So that's a theory that kind of looks at how humans interact with technology. It's a theory that's used a lot in information technology and kind of social networks, but that's actually very similar to connectivism, and it's quite a strong theory in IT. distributed cognition and distributed intelligence were also theories that I thought were kind of linked to connectivism because they looked at that shared aspect of knowledge and the processing in which we undertake to gain more information. So, and Powtoon, so you can put really cool little like circle things in there. So that's just a cool animation. I really liked those. But yeah, so there are other theories that kind of address the same things as connectivism. So particularly active network theory, if you're looking at how technology can affect learning and society, I recommend having a look at that theory. Yeah, be really gentle. Sorry, skipping ahead. So obviously, personal access to the internet has really changed the way that we connect and interact with people. We can share information in really social and participatory ways, like using, Facebook or Skype, LinkedIn, and all of that kind of comes back to new ways of establishing learning communities. So we can establish learning communities online in ways that we've never been able to do before. And connectivism kind of talks about that a lot in the theory. So I decided to do something cool, if it lets me skip forward. I like to give LinkedIn as an example with this because LinkedIn is, does anyone use LinkedIn here? Yeah, so it's like a professional Facebook. And so LinkedIn is, I guess, an online community. And I found this cool website that will break down your LinkedIn community based on the different industries that you're within. So I use LinkedIn a lot for professional development. I'm in discussion groups. I connect with lots of people around different aspects of my work. And so this analysis I thought was a really cool kind of visual way of looking at connectivism because you have your, has anyone done the Simmons reading? So knowing about nodes and networks. So a node kind of, and let me know if I'm describing this not the best way. A node is like a little learning community. So that's a small part of the network. So you can't see the colors very well in this, but the kind of peachy color, that represents IT. So that IT kind of little community of mine would be a node. And then you have pink, which is higher education. So that would be another little node. And altogether, these nodes form a network that I have access to. So a network of different potential learning communities. So you can see how interrelated and complex they can be, and how they can all kind of connect back upon one another. So I'm not sure if this is a good example, but that to me is kind of a visual of what connectivism might look like. It's kind of messy and chaotic, but there's order and structure kind of underneath that. And that's what a social network kind of looks like, if you want to visualize it. You can run your own network analysis. It's free. I just went to that Social Lab website. But I want to get you kind of thinking about your own learning communities and what you do outside of work. So your kind of informal learning communities, because I feel like connectivity kind of looks a lot at connecting those different informal channels and using technology as a way, as a conduit for that, and also a participator in those learning communities. So, skipping ahead. So first question, maybe if you guys want to do this on your tables, what digital tools and social networks do you use to build your knowledge? So if you want to maybe have 3 minutes to have a chat about that, maybe brainstorm or talk about, what different digital tools, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, there might be like websites that you visit, blogs. What different digital tools and social networks do you use to build your knowledge? Because your students will have access to their own kind of learning communities like this as well.
I'm going to put the question back up in a second. I'm just checking something. All right. Maybe I can actually do this too.
So I'll kind of dance around between the tables if you guys want to have a start with that question there.
Yep.
Was that website
Social Lab?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not spelled correctly. It's SOCILAB.
Oh my God, just printed it out.
Yeah, Ali.
How many pages do you have?
Shoot.
So if you just Google, yeah.
That's his whole thinking about it. He's a completely verbose.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure it didn't spam all my connections with an invitation to do that. Because I removed it from LinkedIn as soon as I added it. But like, yeah, no one told me it's spam them, so if you want to give it a try. So yeah, what do you guys use like the internet outside of work? Yeah, I'm sure everyone does. Do you use it? Do you like? Are you on Facebook? Are you in any Facebook groups that might be around kind of related to your work? Yeah. I'm just going to start writing down because it will be good to get a list.
We're going straight to the Connectivism search. Yeah, so I would say, to me, this stuff, I just go straight to search. And it's got no kind of social network. It's connection. It has got connection from connecting thousands Well, it is. People don't use any other search Yeah. University is not searching weirdly.
Do you make boards and stuff like how do you use it?
Yeah.
Following other people, what they have ideas.
In general, we are to use some kind of social media to find things out, get out, up to date.
Even to find social law.
Do you guys
Yeah,
have to do that for
you
your
can
work,
define
or is it
those
something
other
that
social
you
media
kind of do
sometimes.
yourself?
Get an idea like something that you would want more information about, there are some ideas that are there. Yeah. So,
No, it's true. I mean, I think that's pretty much what happens.
And I think
Although
that
I mentioned if you learn about
the
games,
aspect is that diversity of
Yes,
ideas.
I think
and
it's
so
your-
you might visit, you might follow
I know that it's
around the same idea, or
if you were trying to find out about
3 or 4
a particular game,
videos before you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I
you
want.
go to a social network.
interest.
Interest, yeah.
Interest. Yeah.
Are there any comments on your side?
School teachers do kind of interest.
You're using LinkedIn?
Yeah, but I used to, yeah, I used to.
Okay,
I guess, the kids, I use, engagement.
okay, but what do you use as a professional capacity? What, you said you use LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Oh, it's chunk, visual form, not chunky, kind of easy.
Not really.
Yeah.
I follow school.
Okay, cool.
So basically,
It's Pinterest that, like, it doesn't get.
I mainly follow it with WhatsApp and things like that, so.
Yeah, that's but actually
That's
she
always
talks
using
about
Twitter.
websites.
And I sort of, use something like Project Zero, I follow Project Zero.
Yeah, so again, YouTube is, unlike Pinterest, which is a social
There's a lot
media.
of jargon out there, like, once upon a time, followed it, it's like that.
So
It's certainly
you're
visual.
making decisions really quickly, or you might follow something.
Yeah.
And then, but, so, like, we don't even have to sign up. It's like, it's a little, it's one by Google, so it's the same for you. So you can actually just search YouTube without actually supplying any kind of profile information. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to say who you are. I mean, you can do that, but you don't have to.
How about you?
So
Do you
you
think
can
we're
get
any
Google.
social networks or any social networks?
Just
Yeah.
searching just videos, yeah. And then, for me, I've just been
Do you use
buying
any,
so much
just
stuff.
in general, do you use any social networks?
Seasons or videos to actually post them.
Are you connected to people that you might have studied or worked with on there?
Assuming they're
Yeah,
right.
but we don't talk about
But it's just like,
But do you share stuff that still like work really well? Like I know my friends share if they like have a good story or just they might like or comment on a news article that even though it's not a direct way of them kind of saying, hey, this is about work, it's still kind of just such a natural part of what you're interested in, kind of follows you to those areas. Do you find that happens or not at all?
Although like I'm trying to use school experience information systems, it's not really used social networks to build knowledge.
Intentionally.
Yeah, intentionally.
Yeah.
No.
Do you think that there's a possibility for it to happen unintentionally? Like, do you think that you might get some from that even if you're not actively seeking it?
I'm not saying it's a better thing, I'm just saying it's a really thing that you contribute connections to knowledge.
And it's like we have a Facebook page. Yeah. So for that, you're sharing from different campuses and from different branches, you're sharing success stories or issues or.
It is maybe
It is accessible to students also, like ethics.
So knowledge you mean in general?
Just any kind of knowledge. Yeah, connectivity, like really,
What do you call it?
I guess, look at knowledge, like professional life and personal life is being really blended. So we're accessing information about work that might help us at work, outside of work, or when we're at work, we might be like,
Yeah, builds on
we're using it to manage
more than one
communication
person.
with parents or something like that. So it's really
Like it
focused on
is
that blend
being,
between
sometimes it's even
private
more than one person.
and work. But I'm gonna just stop time.
Through the fact
Okay.
that people agree. Yep.
So I think we kind of had a long time. So we talked a bit about if we do use digital tools and social networks, what they are and what kind of,
I guess, knowledge we might start to build from them. Oh, wrong keyboard. Let's try. being really
Can you
gentle.
forward? Okay, so
Hello?
do Alt Tab.
Oh no, yeah, it's just really like I don't
Right.
want to press it too much because
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
jump forward like 3 screens.
Got it.
So the next 2 questions I want you to kind of think about with these social networks. So our group talked about kind of Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter as examples. Did you guys have any other networks that you talked about?
We had Facebook and Pinterest.
We mentioned Wikipedia, which was
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even like on a news website, sometimes they have like comments or discussions, like somebody likes to jump in there and, comment on an issue. So there's lots of different social networks that we can use. But I want you to start thinking now for like another 3 minutes. What are the similarities or differences between those networks? And who are the people that you're actually connecting with and how are you connecting? Is it really active? So are you sending them like a message or writing a little email or letter? Or is it something that's non-intentional? So how are you actually connecting with other people on those networks? And how does, if you're using Pinterest, Pinterest obviously has a set way that you can share information. Facebook has a different way that you share information. So how do you think that affects your experience and your sharing of knowledge and information and connecting with people? So we'll start again. I know. Always terrible at this time. Okay. So
I mean, we said that.
what are some of the things we noticed about the network?
I, for one, use Reddit, so.
Oh yeah. Reddit's really. So do you want to explain to everyone if they don't know what Reddit is?
It's like a forum. Yeah, it's like a forum. You just enter the first the website and you see a forum, and you can access privacy files.
That's more like
Networks there. For
Pinterest
instance,
or
like knitting. So you find
what's the
those-
difference between
Yeah, so like a community of knitting.
what is that technology?
just go and join and make it different. It's really good. I use that, but not for work. So that's why I asked you, like, what do you mean? Like, but for me, like, I want to see their, of course, good and fine.
Are there any kind of boards that like, so Reddit has like, I don't know, just ways you can share their identity on there. But you can have like, there's a world news forum, there's like world news forums in every country, and there might be hobby forums. So are there any kind of particular forums that you regularly visit that or is there anyone that is that kind of connected to your work? Like you're doing your PhD actually in
No, not necessarily. Like, it's interesting. It's just for interest. It's not for my work because for me, like, I'd rather go on Google Scholar than
Pinterest. So you like that really formal?
Yeah, but it's just for great. I need to know what's happening in the world.
So that's obviously a forum where you can't really tell
What
their
profile,
whereas Google Scholar you can see the credentials.
to you.
Because Google Scholar is another social network in a way, because share publications, easy, very outside of work, particular research. So even though it's not as a active on sorry, as a Facebook where you're like intentionally kind of posting a little snippet, Google Scholar could be kind of more social network. Yes, it could have greater credibility because
So you don't have to join to see Facebook website.
yeah, and then and you can look at, so we're talking about kind of how the tool affects what you do. So Google Scholar has
Okay.
I imagine
I'm just saying that
around
it's
how
kind of
you
personalization.
yeah,
But Facebook
be
be
a
a
You know,
Yeah,
the searches
that's
the
the
database.
reason, not just sort of.
It tells you if those, for instance, journals or
That's right.
what's their
But
value.
I know that.
It does do.
Also know that.
It's like Google.
Yeah, so it holds some of that knowledge around how do I make a decision about
Yeah,
this employee. So the tool in itself kind of takes on a role that
Every,
previously,
you know, they do use
well, any database kind of takes on that role of, sorting whether this is actually of note or worthy.
But I think whereas it's before it looks at that, you know.
Spontaneously. Because you can improve and
Even if you try.
Yeah,
random people join in and share.
Well, connectivism, yeah, looks at, I guess, how we interact with many different
Well,
things.
you can do a search.
So,
You actually see.
Reddit is more of like a
the
break
face, and
between
then it'll say
practice
this is
as
the
well.
person looking for, then you click on, trying to see it, let's say private.
So what are some other things that we
You
use
get a whole
about
history of
the
photographs.
tools that we use about Pinterest? Compare that to say Twitter.
I was just thinking that sometimes.
That's what I mean, I mean,
I,
because Pinterest
I
may
never
not
know
have
when
that,
I.
it's not a personalized, you know, it's
Try to
personalization.
learn, like, kind of ideas and
It's more like,
I
I agree.
getting, I see in Facebook news that I will be in my eyes, I spot.
Yeah.
They can read, like, I guess, quite a lot of statements that I.
Just some of these things are more personalized, I'm saying.
Yeah.
You say,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's, I think, almost for those ideas.
Information overload.
Yeah.
And others will like that.
I also really
Speaking
think
in Spanish.
Yeah.
You're not really
And I guess
that
if you think
interested
about kids, like,
with
think
person.
about the way Facebook comes up, suggested feeds,
And that's the same issue too.
when
I
there's
mean, you
some
could
kind
go
of
on
price
channels.
or event like that.
I find
people
channels
use
sometimes
that
I public my
shared
own
image,
so
there
I
are
find
lots
like
of
it's
things
really
where the tool
When you-
kind of
if you
affects our
if you search on
behaviors, that's
and
another
then
thing.
you find
I've
the girls
active
channel
connectivism
subject,
and
right?
active
Go
network
and
theory,
click
which
on
I really
any-
like. I think
in
that
YouTube
explains the
in
kind
the
of
channel.
emotional relationship
Will always
well
throw up
between
only their
humans
channel
and
as the next,
objects or machines in a way.
the next video to watch. Whereas if
So
you
there's
don't
lots
do
of,
that,
yeah, unintended consequences.
you actually get other people's videos as kind of,
Things.
I know it's kind of
I guess
random,
when
but
you
it's
use
usually
it
within
in
the
a network,
context
so
of
you
what
look
we
at
do.
Facebook,
Within the context of the same
compared
search,
to say
you get
Reddit
alternative,
about
which might actually be better than what you originally clicked on.
what are the kind of
Sometimes you
differences
click on
in
it that hope.
the way that we connect with
And
people?
what you want is not the same person's crappy, other alternative stuff.
I call it
They
the-
like you, the same topic, something that really you track by channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whereas just something like generalized, way around it, more focus on
Or
each
each
one.
might not like Twitter
Focus on
format, but then again, you might like.
So it's not a person.
I guess,
session, it's
like,
each person.
you know, maybe
If someone
someone who
likes
likes
using
using
that,
that,
or is
very
that
good,
good?
it's
It's
nice.
No,
And, you know, it's just what works, you know,
and
and
what I think, yeah, something like that, so it's,
often it's the vision.
I'm not,
Mostly
but
people
I do very interesting videos.
very
on
bland and
things.
it's just a lot of writing.
Nothing to do with it. I mean, sometimes they are.
Especially young people.
Some of them are, some of them are.
Well,
In fact, I've got
they're
three
thinking about
so
the
that's
website like
actually
Reddit
go
or 4chan, which is the terrible website.
Four are terrible.
Which
is all actually
they
my
are
point.
more
Because I
than
actually do,
no one you're thinking.
paper, online
But
channel.
no, it's like a, you're inside into teenage brains. Lots of kids and but they're very tech savvy. I would say they're not very. Yeah.
No, I put them on each page. Like I've got viewing us, not it's just film
But it's
videos,
very, again, it's a
categorized.
bigger, it has a little longevity, and even though the web has updated a lot, like in.
Anyway, that's not,
content,
not
those
good.
forms
That, I quite
of
like the fact that I can do that.
Craigslist and Gumtree,
Not the
again, are very
organization on my
basic.
own, no.
No
one
social
follows
networks
me.
in a way, but the intent to be extremely
So
there, yeah.
No, but I think it's actually people I know, like Facebook, these people who I thought, oh, this video is really having fun.
I might.
And they've actually, oh, I follow it, but I don't know why. It's all the other stuff related to that. People who go, oh my God, why did I follow this guy?
So, thank you, everyone. Did you want to, like, each table maybe have a bit of a share about anything interesting or any poignant aspects around your own use of social networks or social media or any kind of website that has some kind of social aspect to it?
What's the difference between Pinterest and Facebook?
what's the difference between Pinterest and Facebook? Well, as we spoke about, Pinterest is more like a collection database, collection of little snapshots, thank you, thumbnail images that you click on, you can save or pin it to whatever category you want to pin it to. Other people can then, if you have a public profile, people can repin it if they're interested. Whereas Facebook, you have to be a member to see other people's pages or not like them, but you have to do, I mean, depending on if you're private or public, that sort of things, but you can share people's images on there if they allow it. Yeah. So they've got to make sure that their settings are private if they don't want it shared. So,
We felt there was a stronger connection to the person through Facebook than there is to Pinterest. Although there's a person behind Pinterest, we're not that interested, are we?
no, I'm just interested in the
content.
pictures, as some teachers are.
And also has YouTube channels.
And I was saying that I felt uncomfortable sometimes when I get trapped by someone's YouTube channel, where I don't really want to see their next video. I prefer not to have clicked on the YouTube channel first to see their first video, because usually if you just click on the video without the channel, the next one it throws up will be within the same context because it's a Google search that's finding the next one, and it may actually be on the same topic that may be better than the one that you originally clicked on, which is crap, and it ends up showing you if you're in the channel, it shows you the next bit of crap that same person has produced.
So it's kind of making decisions for you.
It certainly is, and I think bad decisions
Yeah.
for my purpose. Well, only if you go to the channel. You have to make sure that you get out of the channel. Does this happen to people? You can get out, you can follow a channel if you want to, like you would in Facebook. So you follow them in person. But if you don't want that to be the case, you have to get out of that channel. Otherwise, all you're going to get, the next video that it'll present is a kind of, it's random, it feels random to me, or it feels kind of, but it isn't random, it's Google's doing it. It feels like you're getting another interesting website or another interesting person if you're not in the channel. A completely different perspective on the same topic, which may actually be better than the one that you actually originally picked on. Had a nice title.
Yeah.
YouTube are actually doing the job for me.
A lot of websites are. We were kind of talking about, say, the difference between like a casual information board, like Reddit was brought up as an example, and how that processes information to us in a very different way than, say, Google Scholar does, because you kind of look at Google Scholar as a social network in a way, even though you're not kind of sharing snaps about your dinner or like what you did on the weekend. People are sharing content via databases that are linked to Google Scholar. So Google Scholar kind of makes decisions about what information you will view there based on the rules that are set up within. Did you guys want to share anything else?
We talked about the visual aspect of, the need and where it plays, or whether you actually connect to that. Often helps decide whether you're actually going to use it. So, some people might enjoy the LMS thing, whereas other people may prefer using the Blackboard because it's supposed to. So often it's the way that you connect, all the tools that you use depend on your preferences. So if you like a Mac or if you like a PC, what works for you.
And we also had an interesting, did you want to share about how you felt sometimes you get more information on the app?
Yeah, basically that usually when I use Pinterest or Facebook or something for my notes filming, it's more like I learn more than I want because it's not necessarily something I search by searching words, but it's more like I get information that I would never otherwise get.
So I have one more question, and then I'm very happy to hand over. And that is, sorry. See what I mean? It's really cool, but like you have to be so gentle when you're. Okay, I'll move the box, but you can probably guess what this word ends with, the letter. Do you think a new learning theory is needed for the digital age? So connectivism is a proposed theory. Do you think we actually need a new learning theory? Do you want to maybe have a chat about that for 3 minutes again? For a good keeping streak?
Can I start off? I know you think you can see it. Very close. Is there any particular theory that you have?
I think we have lots of different theories.
And which one do you guys see first? Yes, it could be done because they're working on visual environment. And they come with digital age.
What do you think is not working?
Is that something? Yeah.
Like the idea of connectivity is
I mean, if you go right back to the real obviously extended from that.
What did you guys think of connectivism as a theory?
Well, yeah, 1800s or 1917. Just after the
theory.
revolution. I think the theory about community.
I don't even know what makes a theory.
Context.
Becoming theories there. Yeah, you're probably dead by the time.
She says he was the reaction that he was really earlier. Describes how learning exactly reaction, child. I found it interesting that he used an expert teacher to actually curate emotions. stages, technology. Yeah.
I don't know about
That's no, that's theory. That's what guys come. Yeah, sure. So
that.
the charm though, you have certain things, they need concrete
Some of
things.
the things that are in research I do,
So,
well, and they were supporting it, I guess, as a methodology. So it was a model that you can kind of use to help
yes.
students still comply.
There is
with
connections
some
between
is probably like in particular
cognitive
education theory
so
that I created.
so
Yeah.
it's actually
And so how you can adopt that theory into digital environments. So if you could model it in itself is the theory, although the kind of debate was question is that whether it has to be.
yeah, well, it's the same. Usually, so they do have a story, so it's not knowledge, but maybe catch
But
all
there
that
is
stuff.
applied more than once in this social space. Then it becomes a theory.
So, in my
So,
mind, it's not just to do with cannibalism, but it's just to child now, their brain. It's to do with
So
what they already
it's
know.
still more about use testing.
And
That's how
they
usually
don't
what
know.
we as a methodology
It's just about it's good. They know. You can't develop anything all that by driving. It's not just because the babies move to the next stage, but they can then know abstract. They have to know the concrete. And then they know
But it's important for illustrate.
basic systems. So it's kind of like,
So you have students, and they join the network.
yeah.
So what I understood from connectivism is that it's on things and it's not really.
I'm not gonna
It's more open.
that's really
It's like a Facebook group, but not necessarily for students. That's why, like she said, constructivism is better because it's a fixed like group.
Well, this I may be being a bit shy, but the reality is you don't need social.
When what there is development,
And
and there are changes, like this, it's dynamic, it's not restricted or it's not constrained.
No, I mean the group. Like the students. Like you will not bring an IT.
Constructivism is about the.
Some of the problems-
Development themselves,
Yeah.
how someone learns, so that it's, I guess it's.
some of the things that you know,
Yeah.
Facebook
Yeah.
allows
You guys
and
understand, so like,
are way beyond
you know, like.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah, so you know, like psychological development, so like
so that
how
certain
you
things about distance,
learn the stages of
certain
development.
things about
Okay.
quantity,
Through that
certain
period.
things about
With
Yeah,
investment
like
time,
the-
behavior, the
up to dateness, whatever's happening around the group, you can actually know what each of your friends is eating for breakfast.
things can be.
If you open your Facebook.
If you send them a message and say, "Can you tell me what you had for breakfast?" You'll probably
So you study the
what they
student.
have. I mean, they're not going to not that you or if they're at work, they've got nothing to do
Theory
with it,
itself.
they're going to answer that.
How will you use it?
What did you
That's
have?
not, they put it on
You
Instagram.
know what I mean?
So
Like,
I guess the assumptions are that people will value behavior in certain ways, so that individuals
Can I just say
provide
this thing?
information based on their previous experience. And so they need to make meaningful connections to their experience in order to take on new information. So like, you know, a child learns how to walk, they have to learn how to stand first. So that's kind of a very naive kind of example, but you know, at school, a child kind of learns to talk, they need to link that back to their prior knowledge.
Over
in order to take the next
follow
step.
it and like or dislike.
Yeah,
Just
so
like.
they're always making
Usually
connections
lies.
back to their previous research.
She just
I
gets
guess
thousands of likes.
connectivism acknowledges
Just
that
doing
people
nothing. Like, she takes a photo.
appreciate information differently, and that's affecting how they approach.
People love it. They sit on Instagram and see a picture, like a photograph. It doesn't mean anything, but I don't follow it, but you know, no one.
I trying to grapple with it. I did it with it as a strategy. But you agree, so you knew it well, people have different thoughts and.
Like she's going to do a
Some people say it's a theory, much
Yeah.
theory.
And then.
Sorry.
because I'm using a different
I suppose so.
interpretation, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you.
I don't know why that's interesting, but I think it's interesting on the quickness or the updatedness of the work. And you would never know what she did all day.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone. That definitely was or was not very nice. Roughly. So what do you think? Do we need a little theory on the digital age? Is connectivism the answer to all our problems with the internet?
It may not be the answer, but we do updated version of the at least the older theories. Yeah, that's the most of the things are aged.
Yeah. And so what makes them age? What has changed now?
The human development doesn't change, and you still need those theories to understand behaviors in a child. But the 21st century, the way that people see the development now is changed. The way that we see the world around us has changed. So we need to update.
I feel like it's just naturally evolves as well. It's theory, so I feel like there's always some new sort of buzzword that's going around at the time. So how one at the moment at school is growth mindset. So that's a new one that's coming around. So I reckon in 5 or 10 years there'll be a new buzzword that's happening.
Or could it be a buzzword that applies in the
Probably.
Good for it. Well, we're just talking about social constructivism and connectivism and all the difference. But so I'm doing something like this for my work, and for me to, why I was asking, because for me to circumvent this problem, I'm using 2 theories. And that's the issue that we have here, because there's no real theory for explaining this question. And everyone's trying to explain this question. That's why they brought in connectivism. So for me, I'm using 2 theories to actually understand the learning process under the umbrella of social constructivism.
And do you think that connectivism, to say it was something that was useful and decided to keep on for a while, do you think that it will have longevity? I mean, look how quickly the internet has changed things. Do you think this theory will apply for us, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, or will we need something new again? Yeah, sounds very good.
Well, I think all theories have got their problems, they've all got gaps. I mean, that's why it's good to have more than one sometimes. I mean, it's not that it always works to have just 2. I'm not even saying that you can't just have one. You can just have one. If you just trying to focus, it's relevant. But there will always be opportunities for coming up with some way of explaining things. And I think what we've done tonight, maybe just quickly, is quite good because you have brought other theories in. You tried to work out whether this theory, connectivism, does actually relate to either other theories that are around, and especially network theory, and that there is kinds of overlaps in many of these theories. And you can't often avoid the fact that some of the theories work in some cases, and the new theory uses a bit of that and then sort of extends it just that little bit that makes some of it a little bit clearer, or maybe not, or maybe it's actually just could be a fad, or it's just a weird way of talking about something. So it is a difficulty. But that was good. I mean, excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Can you put yours up on the screen too? Is that what we can do now?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I was going to access my email. So my email.
What about putting the PowerTunes link through?
Oh yeah, I was going to turn it off because it's not private, but I'll leave it up for the course.
No, yeah, in the link.
Yeah, no, you have to. That's one of the downsides. Unless you pay $20 a month, your links are all public, so anyone can access your PowerTunes. So
Great.
Yeah. So I will put it up. I won't remove it until the end of the.
Yeah.
Just bear with me while I get it up.
So, although we're talking about connectivism, it's not the case that connectivism is the new thing for this subject. By the way, you just think, I'm not trying to put it down. I really love it. I think it's a really great little theory. And I think even next week that some of the readings refer to abundance and connectivism is used as kind of a question about the information abundance that we're actually having to deal with. So it is a kind of it's a useful theory, but it's not necessarily, I think, as I said, it may not necessarily be completely accepted. And it's got its own like gaps, but all theories have got gaps. It's not going to be a universally kind of accepted thing. All right, let's hand over to Lisa.
Okay, just very quick. Now, I come from a completely different background, obviously being a primary teacher and working in ICT day in and day out. And I like to play a little bit with my kids when I go in and teach or go in and work with kids. So basically, what is a game? So what I'm looking at is game-based learning, engaging kids, hooking them in, and catering to all the kids in the classroom or across the school. It doesn't matter what level of ability they are to the high achieving kids. So an activity where decisions result in risks and takes, immediate feedback on decisions made, simulation bounded by rules, but with no real world consequences. Often where learning the rules develops in stages and with experience. Narrative, little stepping stones, as we're talking about at our table before. So it's sort of like linking in with what Megan was saying in regards to connectivism, but also the connectivity that kids have with games and their learning, their level of ability. And the stepping stones, we're talking about Piaget before, those little, they must have the concrete first in order to develop on further.
Can I just say,
yes?
because that is connected, those two theories overlap, cognitivism and constructivism. If we're looking at those things as being developmental stages, constructivism also is based on those little steps, so that you must construct from an experience. You do it's like having a stage before you can move on. You need to have the experience, a set of experiences, like in a game, before you can move to the next step. Yeah.
It's like when I work with the kids as well, is if I'm not familiar with a game, or say like with Scratch or with Minecraft or with all the other online tools, we do have them offline, the Scratch, the software itself, but I learn with the kids. I don't just stand in front of the class and tell them how to do it. I'll sit down with them, I'll give them 5 minutes, then a 5-minute quick demonstration of what I want them to achieve in the end, and then I let them go and play, and I'll play with them because I like games. So what is gamification? So the use of rewards, badges and points to encourage participation, continued engagement, demonstrate completion of tasks and progression of skills. So why do games engage so well? Tell me, why do games engage so well? Someone?
Because they give you a chance to go up to the next level. You want more.
Yeah, it's all like that little, just what that bit of success I've got here, and then I want to get to the next step. It's like little stepping
Little things at a time, so
it provides you context and instant reward. Good game design scaffolds players, so games neither too difficult or
too easy.
provide rewards and the leveling up. Students can demonstrate progress, it's interactive, and what draws the kids in is it uses pictures, sounds, text, movement, provides the right amount of information
To the player.
So what is effective game-based learning and why does it work? That's a question for you guys to discuss at the table. Oh, you know this page.
I think that particularly competitive style of game. I think where those that gaming, they want to play, they want to do it, they want to be there. So it's like they can enjoy the environment, they
It's fun. But sometimes it does have. Also, if people, the students don't feel they're separate, but it's a one big try and encourage you to learn. It's fun to report. So, more than even difficult. So it's actually getting a lot of your kids go to school.
Yeah, interesting. From the secondary perspective, you've got to be careful. I think sometimes they can call on their face. So, for example, of the kids do the test that you're bringing, their own personal information. And in that circumstance, it may not work, but you can do things like foods. You can, those sorts of games.
I think it works.
And it's just a different way. It's a bit of fun.
It'll do something.
So, yeah, often I find that sometimes year 12 plus they have got systems that may but it happens to be the younger level for me, 10 years experimentation actually generates success. So this is what I was about exploring different that we like to create to find out. So maybe I'll be my head as a pretend to work organization network, so this is also follow one instructor.
Yeah, they want to be told. So it does not.
Yeah, everything has to be perfect.
And I think that teachers can be the fine because what I mean by that is that the kids sort of, when the teacher starts talking about social networking, you see the kids, they just don't know. They're like, oh, here we go again, another discussion about social networking. And we think it's like we're saying, I just think it's really good.
It's the same sort of
This is old. Yeah, sometimes we have to be careful in that regard. Or what we show you good reasons put it on for kids and say, okay, well then, based on what you know about, based on what you create an activity.
I mean, teach knows these things, but overdo this kind of stratification.
Students who can still live towards the next one.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Like, it takes a lot of your kids to get time in that
notion of small steps, and people
draw
having
line.
The competitive
response to the
thing that it brings in primary years, not we should enjoy that.
Yeah, I think it's open network. So like in those environments, we say there's no right or wrong answer. Like there are lots of real behavior around decisions how cause and effect. So and I guess that's just really good around social innovation. So if I make these decisions, like this is super basic, and I can't remember what it's called, it's like how they might satisfy me. So teaching and you start with the situation, and you can decide whether you're going to be online maybe, or whether you're going to be maybe, whether you buy your brain art, or whether you like to do it. And that goes all the way right through your whole life. You make different decisions in this game. So that could be like a cool way of showing people, teaching them about the cause and effect or different outcomes. But there's no clear so like what kind of game do we have in the little through game? Is there a little video that you can actually on video tutorials of these areas of kids and show them that. Just think that it's such one day when we're seeing in our head or with my object. Something. So what do you use in the game?
No,
goes up, we're like, more
Yeah,
demands.
all- And the roll of the eyes. Okay, so, okay, so from, sorry. I'll let you finish that up. So what have you guys, what is an effective game-based learning? What is effective game-based learning and why does it work?
In charge of the, is it in charge, in charge of their own learning,
In charge of their own learning.
interactive, puzzles, problem solving, so that sort of engaging thing, they're actively thinking, sort of that idea of exploring.
We've got stuff on exploring though, because then we talked about differences between boys and girls. Does anyone want to?
So I work at an all-girls school and they like to be given instructions of what to do, be told what to do. You give very open-ended stuff. They freak out.
Wow. Whereas if it were a boys' school,
They just take it
Yeah.
and do whatever they wish.
it's like it's second nature to them.
Yeah.
I don't want a problem, boys want a problem solved. Interesting.
I'm just saying that we should be careful about,
Yeah.
just sort of rigidly kind of applying that kind of notion, because I do know that there's a hell of a lot of games now designed for girls and women.
Yeah.
And they still require kind of that, same things we went through at the start, the small steps, kind of the iterative kind of learning process.
Yeah.
Which to me is, does involve them with a bit of experimentation, a bit of trying things out. But it may not be the same as shoot 'em up games where you have to go around and find the criminal or whoever you're going to shoot. Alien. I mean, I'm just saying there was a hell of a lot of games designed for shoot 'em ups in the past.
In fact, a lot of the network games were like Worms, that you spoke about it, Worms, Doom, and even the car racing games that, which was can't remember it, but you actually, they were very violent games, but now they're sort of steering away, some of the games are steering away in that area.
But there's some now that are more about, this is going to sound almost stereotypical, I don't mean that, but you raised this meaning, and this notion about experimenting with different designs or different kinds of qualities of things that may have an affect or more kind of social or even emotional kind of experimentation to them. So it's a weird kind of different experimentation or exploration, may not be the same as kind of looking for the gun or the tool for blowing up the bomb or whatever. It's just slightly, it's not the same. It's certainly, it does have, to me, it certainly has that wonder of individualization. You don't always have to be told where the things are, with girls as well as boys.
Sure. All right, so last bit of it is students already feel fail or failure. So basically we've got to turn that into a positive. So we would think the education teachers to start getting kids to think differently. So think first, attempt in learning. So it's like getting them engaged and hook them and get them to problem solve. So basically with the new curriculum, this is where it's steering us, steering us into engaging the learners, hooking them in and problem solving. So being the designers, being the producers, being the architects in design and technology to digital technologies, being the engineers. So that's it from me.
Very good.
I like these short and sweet.
No, that's great. That is a really important points to keep in mind in relationship to what games do that we don't necessarily do in teaching and learning. Like I'm not necessarily doing it now, but games don't go out there to try and teach themselves to individual students in a kind of a set of instructions. You can actually follow instructions for games, but generally you learn by playing the game. There's a kind of a really strong activity base to learning, and that's what I think this is talking about here. We're talking about learning by doing, or I'm calling it experimenting. It may be the wrong word to use the kind of generalized audience, but it's learning by attempting something where there is at least some feedback, and even if you do fail, I like that kind of notion of one of the problems with schooling can be that people feel that they won't go on if they fail. Whereas in a game, in a weird kind of a way, a failure doesn't mean that to a game person. The person playing a game means they should try again. There's no penalty for trying again. In fact, it's actually one of the things that you naturally do. Once it didn't work, for some strange reason, people don't feel that that's a problem. I'm pretty sure.
If you run out of credits, you have to wait the next 24 hours.
Well, of course. I mean, there may be actual some kind of reward that you're working towards, but even if you have to wait 24 hours, that's even less time probably than you have to wait. If you fail a year in primary school, you have to wait a whole year before you go up to the next year. So there's a kind of, it seems much more serious. The consequence of failure in school, or sometimes in school, seems much more serious.
And with the game-based learning, it's bringing everything into it as well, and it's steering away from the failure side of things and having the kids succeed and pass their schooling in a different way, rather than in a book or in a test. They can do it visually and they can do it verbally.
Yes. And so I know that you're probably referring to a guy called G, or G, I can never say his name, G-E-E. Has anyone heard of him? We did this last year. He does actually refer to games as being kind of a direction that maybe schools or teachers should think about in relationship to learning. It's not connectivism. G is not talking about, it's talking about gamification. He is talking about a new theory of learning, and it is a different theory. So I'm trying not to overlap them too much in your mind, but I had, there was two sets of readings for tonight, and one, to me, was connected to the other. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are connected though. So gamification, or games-based learning, is a particular theory of learning, and you can read about it, and it's more like what Lisa's just been talking about. And it does have a lot of the attractiveness of games as being the basis for what should be considered in terms of what's worth trying out in this new environment that we're working in, the digital environment. Connectivism is, I still think in my mind is related, but it is more to do with making connections between things that we couldn't do before. That is, we did have books before, we did have people before, and we could make connections to those things, and that's basically how we learned. In general, though, that they were fairly kind of limited. We had a limited range of things. Whereas I suppose if you're going to connectivism, suddenly your connections are kind of broadened, not even just substantially, just broadened extra. And then you can just connect to anything. And sometimes it's not, I think you can get a bit distracted by the notion of connectivism being related straight through to people, whereas games are not always related to people, but sometimes they are. So you can play games with others, but sometimes you're learning by playing a game by yourself. Like there's a kind of a feeling that you should get to know the environment before you actually play against the best in the world. So sometimes, is that what you say with the kids? Sometimes they can actually be offline and play a game independently and just see how they go. And they might find things out just by themselves. Yeah. So connectivism also would actually go to that as well. So it's not only social media, although social media is used heavily as a kind of example of connectivism, and it is one of the things I think generated Simmons and Downs' ideas, which is a strong kind of social connection that you get through social media. And it's both gamification and connectivism sort of arose around about the same time. They're not, they're new theories. They're not generally kind of accepted academically, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to say that they're not argued in the literature. They are. And I'm going to talk next week about one of the areas where it's talked about. Okay, well, one of the areas that we have been really focusing, I suppose, on is the notion of communities of practice and communities, so kind of a notion of learning, and it kind of overlaps with a couple of the readings, I suppose, tonight. Did anyone have a look at the reading on Scratch, which is a game building tool, which was called Mind the Gap, which was about some of the problems of the kind of notion of the community that they set up at Scratch. And I'm just hoping that some of you are familiar at least with the notion of Scratch. Can you give me an example, or describe what Scratch is? Got an idea.
It's a programming platform that you use just the blocks to build your game. Yeah, the images and the blocks, and then you just program your game from scratch.
Beautiful. Okay, so it was actually designed by. But it was designed by Massachusetts Institute of Technology to solve the problem of programming in schools. It is actually a problem that arose, you probably know this more than all of us, that programming is one of those really difficult things to actually teach and to learn. And it was especially difficult in primary and high school to get kids interested, especially girls.
Yes.
Especially girls, but boys also found the actual syntax, the writing of lines of code, kind of a little bit boring and difficult. And I mean, it's not necessarily the case that people are inspired to do that kind of work in primary school or high school straight up. So as an introduction, this is why I put the link to Seymour Papert, who only died, about 4 weeks ago. Seymour Papert was at the MIT, and he was one of the instigators of a programming language called Logo, which was designed to introduce kids to programming using a concrete object, like a real computer-based robot turtle. So you could actually have the turtle could be programmed to do things on a computer, yes, and then in the old days you would plug a wire into the turtle from the computer, and the turtle would move around the screen on the floor, depending on the time. Yeah, and now you can actually just get a USB stick, program a USB stick and plug in off the thing goes. And then his Logo language was actually taken up by Lego, and they developed some software which was based on Logo. Lego was allowed the Logo language to be built around the Lego bricks, and so you could program different motors and so forth to do things, and you could construct objects that were very similar to actual machines, actual robots, even, but actual objects that worked and did things very similar to the turtle, by the way. But they were all made out of Lego blocks, and kids learned how to do that, not necessarily by being instructed. So despite the girls thing, it did actually attract girls because they were given a problem to solve. So that they were to design something, a doll that danced, or something they were interested in. It had to be something that, both a group or maybe an individual might actually be attracted to. So that's where Logo. Kids naturally find Lego easy to work with. Everyone's familiar with Lego, and probably some people have positive feelings about Lego when they were a kid.
I was deprived. I missed out on Lego.
Anyone use Lego when they were a kid? Or has kids that use Lego? Yeah, and what do you do with Lego? What do you
You build houses, you build
Yeah.
cars,
So, you just basically stick things together, and that gives you an idea about something else that you might want to do, and to stick more things together, and eventually you make something, and then you might destroy it, and then make something else. So it's actually it's a fun way of designing, usually just without necessarily a great deal of instruction. You don't have to know too much about Lego to put things together in a kind of a useful way that makes some kind of sense to you, and it probably is something more sensible to you that you end up doing. You end up designing a house, maybe a car, or whatever. You don't have to necessarily have an instruction manual to use it. So that was the idea of putting the two things together, which was Seymour Cabot's idea. He worked with the Lego company, and they agreed put out a product called Mindstorms, which is the name of his book. It is actually a product which basically allows you to build robots. The keys to build robots to solve problems. Now, why that's a useful story is because Scratch uses the same concept. It uses blocks or block code, bits of code that are kind of in shape of blocks. It can only click together certain ways. So the syntax is already pre-designed into the blocks, if that makes sense. You have to actually understand.
Forward, you have to choose the forward one, and then you have to type how many
steps, yeah.
How many steps, 5, yeah. Backward, minus.
Yeah, and the blocks are all very colourful. Really, just the main thing is to get the idea of a block coding environment similar to Lego, where you build something by attempting to put blocks together, and then you see that they do actually do things when you run the program. When you press run, it might not do exactly what you want, so you take some blocks out, other ones in, similar to what you might do with Lego. You might put some blocks in, and then it doesn't actually look any good, so you move them around.
At the end, you create animated.
Yeah. So the main outcome is usually an animation of some sort, but it could be a program that is interactive, but mostly near the kids, kind of stories or something of that nature. Things that move around on the screen, they can speak and make sounds.
They can put themselves in there.
They can photograph themselves, they can take photographs of backgrounds, and it's a very creative environment, but it's meant to obviously be based upon a particular notion. I'm saying experimenting and exploring, but they use the term tinkering. It is a common term used in computer science, I think. Tinkering. The notion of fiddling around until you get an outcome without actually knowing exactly what you're doing. You try things out. You sort of attempt to put these two things together, or try this sequence and see whether or not this will actually solve a problem. And that's basically what the system is based on. That's why single packet is worth knowing about, but also the whole kind of notion of Scratch is worth knowing about. Now, the Mind the Gap article, which I'm referring to, if you haven't read it, is worth reading because it's about adding one extra thing to the kind of notion of blocks and programming by tinkering, and that one extra thing is a community. I know we've been talking about communities, and this might seem to be a long bow to arc back to community, but that's what that article is about. They decided that they would allow kids to make little programs that did something that they were excited about, and then share those. And you share it through the Scratch community. So you don't just build something for the sake of yourself, but you may actually build something for the sake of sharing it, or you may build something with other kids or with other people in a kind of collaborative way that allows you to actually pull the material up onto the website. And the good thing about that, on top of the sharing of just your particular achievement, is that other kids can download your Scratch and play with it. And the second thing is they can reconstruct or remix the code to do something extra. So they can add to your code and make something even more elaborate or more exciting for them. So the notion of collaboration in coding is also added to the notion of community. Or, however, that whole article is about the problem of the word community. Okay, so it's the first kind of thing that I suppose many people object to when you're talking about these sort of social learning environments, that it may not necessarily be the perfect kind of way of teaching and learning. that there are problems with these things. I mean, it all sounds wonderful and it all supposed to work in a kind of a perfect world. All of this would actually work wonderfully. But communities of that scale, in this particular article, do have problems. We mentioned the kind of cyber safety stuff that we referred to last week. This is the kind of, again, a long boat, but stretching it a bit. You've got a community where things may actually not go exactly the way that you expect them to. So you have to be aware of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's worth reading the article, is that community isn't necessarily a perfect kind of unhindered environment. It's always going to work in a kind of collaborative, beautiful way where everyone is helping each other. So they do go through a whole range of little examples. The community, by the way, is huge. So they're likely to have more problems than you guys, but I'm just saying you need to be aware that there could be things that go wrong. They've got literally millions of contributors into the Scratch website, and they even asked the question, is that a community? Could I ask that question? If you had millions of people, can that actually be a community?
Common interest.
Hey?
Common interest.
They've got a common interest, that's for sure.
What is the community not? What is the community? Like other things that signify when something is not a community?
Well, we're going right back to the very start of the course here, I suppose, in some respects. There's a kind of limit to the way in which humans naturally deal with community. But we had an argument about whether or not within a learning centre, within a learning community, would you say that a neighbourhood was a community? And I think we were arguing that it wasn't. Although it's called a community, the word is actually doesn't actually fulfil all the requirements of having a special interest or focus and a series of kind of factual activities that everyone shares, and that there are some learners who are being kind of inculcated into the community and gradually moving through, becoming more knowledgeable as they progress, but from more knowledgeable others. So all of that kind of stuff that's in the community of practice kind of idea doesn't actually fit within the word community if you're just talking about a neighbourhood. And usually it's because it's too big, the neighbourhood is too big. There would be a kind of generalised sense for all of them in the same district, so that's maybe an area of interest. But the interesting thing, I suppose, in Scratch is that they do have all got the same interest, but the community is kind of massive, and the interests get a little bit kind of diverse. It isn't all about the same thing. So they use it. I'm going to use some examples here, but there's many examples where communities could be a good description of what happens in Scratch, but maybe it doesn't actually fit as a perfect example. But so they use a kind of question about people having a me focus or a we focus. So one of the things that you could have in a community like Scratch is that you might be more interested in yourself and becoming a kind of a hero or a kind of a god within kind of the areas that you're interested in. So one particular member of the Scratch community was against the notions of only producing animations. This is in the article, Mind the Gap. And so they didn't think that people should use animations as the kind of basis for their contribution to the Scratch community, because they thought it was a programming environment or available for people to put interactions in rather than just telling a linear story, which is sequential, but to allow people to interact with the story that might go off in different directions through programming languages that Scratch allows for. And they were putting down, in fact, I think they were destroying the animations that the kids were producing, the kind of nice little stories where little characters would walk across the screen and then bump into something, but then and actually.
You can create quiz.
Yeah, I'm not saying what you can create anything. It's a open environment. All I'm saying is that this group or this individual argued strongly that all animations should be removed. Another person, that may be not a good example, but you can see where a person who was very, very interested in programming or coding in a kind of interactive sense would not necessarily find animations at a high enough level for that kind of community. So they were trying to separate out who was good and who was bad in relationship to quality of the interaction. But another one was the one where the girl was actually interested in, she wanted to use Scratch as a kind of environment for a protest action on the cruelty to animals. So she used Scratch to tell stories or to put interactions about that were pretty horrific, about animals being tested and damaged and all sorts of violence occurring to beautiful little cute pets that people may have had, cats or dogs or something being tested for perfume. She had pictures and stuff, and obviously the moderators got told off by the parents of the kids who had pets and said this is inappropriate and that had to be controlled. So people had that particular person had a particular right. And the other thing that they said, which I'm just generalising again, I don't want to go on and on about this, but they said that one of the things they're trying to do, which is what I think you should be aware of, is that in the Scratch community, they were trying to make sure that people were engaged and encouraged to work in that environment, in the Scratch community, but with Scratch, because they could personalise their own approach to Scratch. They could tell stories that were relevant to them. They would do things from their perspective. So if they were interested in design, they would do things on design. If they're interested in coding, they could do things on coding. But they said also one of the difficulties with that is that because you're personalising things, then people would actually use it to explain their own personal situation. So some of the people explained how they were lonely or that their life was a misery and how things were terrible. You follow what I'm saying here? That the personalisation maybe wasn't kind of in a positive sense. It was a personalisation that sort of was too personal, like it allowed people, yes, maybe in a positive sense, it may have actually allowed them to get it off their chest, or they got assistance, and people did actually provide them with responses. But one of the things they said is that once you've set that up, once you've explained all of your personal problems, that should kind of get set a bit into the community. It's sort of set in concrete. The traces of it are difficult to erase, and people remember that is your personality. So people had to come in as somebody else to erase the personalisation that they had, or they would try and delete everything that they'd ever done. But obviously, because the coding was available for other people to use, people had actually taken their stories and continued them on and made them worse or whatever. So the things that I'm telling you, all of the stuff that could be worthy of thinking about if you're setting up your own community in a kind of design sense for maybe the second part of the course, the second assignment. You just need to, not necessarily overreact to this, or just saying this is a really valid critique done by a massive website that had all the good, it talks about aspirations and actualities.
So are you just trying to say it can get out of hand?
Can get out of
You can't control what you do.
Exactly. That's all. I'm not saying we'll absolutely go the direction because you're kind of in a more constrained environment, that things don't necessarily happen exactly the way that you're intending to. Just be aware of that as part of the design process. But the way in which they're arguing that you look after a community is there needs to be a moderator. There needs to be someone like the teacher that does actually help with these sorts of circumstances. That it's not going to run in a kind of in a setting like that in a completely kind of uncoordinated way without necessarily someone intervening, or at least the group deciding on some rules and conventions. Similar to what we were talking about the notions of the cyberspace environment being a bit of a kind of coordinated outlaw environment where things kind of get a little bit out of hand unless people start to agree on conventions of practice and how you actually do things. So I mentioned that article because I do think it flows from the kind of notions of the cyber ethics component, and it does actually alert you to even a wonderful kind of environment like, which I really appreciate that MIT put something as good as Scratch together based on historical kind of thinking about how kids learn, how they might actually work through a gamification kind of approach to learning. And it's a really good example of that. It may still, even within that, the Mind the Gap article is saying, just be careful, there may be things that you'll need moderation of, and you just need to be aware that nothing goes as smoothly as you sort of may have aspired to in your original thinking about something. It may need to be reprocessed a little bit just to keep it under. Now, you don't need to worry about that in your first assignment, but you may need to think about that in your second assignment. So we're moving ahead with here, but I think it's a good article, and we'll skip over it if you don't actually go back to it if you haven't read it, and have a bit of a quick look at it. But also think Connectivism, by the way, I don't want you to skip over that either, but that might be related down the track to other kinds of things that you may want to think about in the overlap of many of these theories. Many of these theories do actually, they work up to a certain point, and then there's a gap. Maybe the level of connectiveness that we've got needs to be filled by thinking through something like connectivism. But even that, connectivism doesn't actually solve all the problems. It does have its own kind of limitations. Right, that's probably enough for tonight. You have to write your son by Monday now. Any questions just on that?
Is that time for your one?
Yeah, I've changed it. I will put that up to note.
It was there because I came there.
Yeah, so it's due on Monday, not Friday.
There was a different thing.
There was one on the 3rd, there was one on the 2nd. So I have changed it now to the 5th. Is that it? Okay, so it is definitely not today. So just relax. It's definitely not Friday. It's definitely Monday. No. You have to be here on the class on the 6th. I don't want you to miss the class which Echo done. So if you get a weekend to stay up all night and then, you know, obviously sleeping on the day and then get ready for Tuesday and stuff. I don't know where, I think I probably got that one wrong as well. I just transferred the date. It is, yeah. No, it's not. That's the second one's more early. The second one is the big assignment. It's the biggest. The third one is back in November. It's a very tiny assignment. It's really nothing. So you don't have to worry about the third one really. If I was you, I would not worry about the third one. I would worry about the second one. The second one's due.
Yes, the second one is a 2,000 to 3,000 word essay. There's something similar. It says equivalent too.
Yeah, we see. One of the things that you may do with that one is that you could give some evidence that you have designed something. Now, if you produce a whole series of little screen captures, or actually send us to a website where we can actually interact with things that you're saying that we should be able to do, even if it was only a test, like that would give you an equivalence mark. You would actually have to work out how much time you spend doing that, and I would have to agree. You wouldn't have to write that down, but I would have to accept that, and I will always accept it. I think designing something is much more likely to take more time than it would be to write about it. So it's always likely that you can reduce your work count by actually designing something. A lot, by the way, if you wanted to play around with some tools and give us examples in a tool way, your word count actually drops, which is the description parts.
Design lots of things in one. So you don't need to write essay at all.
If you work out a way to do it, but you have to work out a way for me, and because what the third essay or assignment is, someone has to read yours. So I'm going to just nominate some people to read whatever you've done, and they have to give you feedback. So it's not only just for me in the third.
Can you set publish the web page?
Oh yeah.
And then people can go and visit.
If you're comfortable doing the whole thing without submitting it, then you would have to put a description in that where it's to be found and to turn it in. But if you feel comfortable that your whole design could actually fulfill the requirements of the topic is a design of a community environment. If you think you can do it, maybe your design would actually include some kind of description of what the environment is, which you probably would. Probably put it in the opening of the first page before you told people what to do. They need to know what it was designed to do. That would be quite an interesting way of doing design. There's no reason not to. But I'm saying your word count could go down if you do a bit of design and a bit of description. But that's the second. So don't worry about the second one yet. only worry about the first one. The first one's all words. There's no designing, it's writing, reading other people's work and summarising it, and then probably getting into an example or a context that you even imagine was a real context that you're building. All right, so next
Is
week.
it more theory-based, this first one, or theory?
Absolutely, but you have to think of either one, two, or more theories. One might be enough that you're going to describe, and then you have to describe also what other people have been using that theory for in relationship to digital content. But even if they haven't been, that you're going to say the theory applies to this case because it clearly follows theory, even if they didn't think that they were. Many cases aren't necessarily explained in terms of the theory that you might. So you might adopt constructivist theory. And I did mention, I want to make sure I made this point. We've been talking about communities of practice and constructivism. So everyone's probably pretty clear about constructivism as a theory, which is built on the notion of learning from experience and maybe social construction, learning from others. Constructivism, quite unique about it. The theory that they use in Scratch and that they use often in gamification, but certainly in Scratch, is the notion of constructionism. So it's a different theory, sounding very similar. The words are so close to each other, and they are similar insofar as they both are about constructing something. So one is constructing knowledge through experience. The other one is about constructing things. And I know that could be an experience, but to actually construct something in terms of code or construct something in terms of Lego blocks is a different theory. So constructing something as meaning you do something by acting on a thing, on a real world object. To create an artifact, to create something is a different theory. So I just wanted to mention that.
So that's the difference, difference between constructivism and constructionism is, to explain that.
Okay.
Because
So
you're
constructivism is a highly social theory, highly social. Constructivism could be based on an individual constructing their knowledge in their head, perhaps, but by pulling in experiences or by dealing in a social way with others, by learning through interaction, by experiencing something, by constructing from their previous experience. So building their knowledge. Yes, building is the same word as construction. But constructionism, which is different, is you actually have to build a thing, an object, a real thing. You can't do it by just listening to someone talking to you, like I'm doing now. This is not sufficient for constructionism. It is sufficient. This is sufficient for constructivism because I'm building on your experience by talking. But if we were doing constructionism, you would have to be sitting at your computer creating a program or an interactive that actually explains the thing I'm talking about, and that's the construction. You follow? It's different because it's making as against being experiencing or being present at something, being aware of something. That's different to making. Making is a different form of learning.
Designing a website is constructionism, and reading the content from the website is constructionism.
Perfect. That's good. Okay. All right. Good luck with your essays. Send me questions if you need to. I will change the deadline on the website. It's not quite changed yet.
I again will be here.
Good. That's good.
What about the construction essay? So it's give an introduction, then there's like defining the terms I use.
Yep.
Then there's the theories, like very short ones.
Good.
And
That's fine.
then more space for
discussion.
discussion and then a short constitution type of thing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. The red thing like that.
Yeah. It has to be like that. It just can't be any other way. The discussion bit though should try and relate to a context.
Yeah, like using the theories.
Yeah.
Like
In a
linking
real
them
world
together.
situation. Yeah.
And can I have my own opinions included in the essay, or is it only
Okay, so the first part,
Yeah.
you have to rely on literature. So the first part, including some of the cases that you might refer to that may have actually been based on the theory, that's all somebody else's quote.
Yeah.
In the discussion, it's your interpretation, so it's your own thinking. You can actually say in your discussion, you don't think it works,
Yeah.
not really going to
Okay,
work in
so
this context.
basic
Or,
essay. The introduction can be like why I chose this.
that's right. That's yours.
Okay.
Good.
That's very nice.
Yes.
I'm just trying to give you a quick look at at least the headings I've done. So, I think I've done something talk about this. So, school, benefits of it. Yeah. Some studies apply. Yeah. I thought about doing that.
That's good.
Guidelines.
Congratulations. Lovely.
What am I missing?
No. So what you've done,
Do I need to have like some sort of discussion of whether I think it's
well, because you're actually doing that in your recommendations of what you should do with social media in schools, that would be partially yours and partially maybe from websites that you've got.
in there as well.
Yeah, and maybe the ethics considerations would also be within that kind of context. Yeah. So what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to lay out a kind of theory of collaboration, a theory of kind of social media,
yeah,
and why those other people have written about that, what they're saying about that and learning.
Yeah.
You're not going to, that's not your theory, that's their theory. And you're going to say, this actually applies in relationship to ethics in this way, or this way it applies in relationship to these recommendations in this way. This is my feeling about those. They do actually either work or they don't work.
Yeah.
And the same with ethics, you can do the same.
So I'll probably tie that in with guidelines.
In guidelines. Do a little bit of you in those, the latter part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And or the context, a little bit of where it may work in a kind of school, like a girls' school that you're in,
Okay.
where it doesn't sort of apply, or maybe does apply mostly in girls' schools. And you can be completely in favour of the theory or you can slightly criticise it.
I haven't had this happen before, but Eternity has picked up things like my references page.
Yeah.
Has included that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to avoid that.
You can't do that. You have. I have to turn it off. If I left it on, which I have, I think because I haven't gone back in and checked it. This is whatever was left last year. So it says include the references or don't include the references. I can tick that or turn it off. You can't change it. Now I know that within my own knowledge of turn it in, it will pick up everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's what I think it's been left to.
Right.
So it doesn't matter any references or direct quotes that are in your document, and it picks it up and colours it. That's fine. It's not going to be counted. It doesn't get counted. It's listed as a percentage.
Right.
But it just comes off straight away. You didn't even read the percentage beside it, so you just negative.
Yeah, correct. So like it came up as 25%, right?
Right.
And I know that having, like for example, just to give you an example, like that's a direct quote, right?
Yeah.
It's more than 40 words,
That's
single lines.
Yeah.
But why has that come up? That's what I was just questioning.
Yeah,
It should
I
come
can't
up.
turn that off.
No, I know that.
I can't actually turn off direct quotes, but I can turn the references off.
Yeah.
But generally what happens is that if they tell us, don't react until it goes over 25%.
Yeah.
If at 25%,
It's right on.
it's right on.
Yeah.
You'll find that if you wanted to, you could actually bring that down to 3 or 4%, and if you took out all your direct quotes or whatever, and you bring it right down. But 25% is roughly where they say if you react at 25%, you're doing the wrong thing. You got to wait until it's 30% or 50% or something like that.
Yeah, because I find it odd because it's all been referenced well, and in other assignments it's never really picked it up like that. So
it's because I haven't turned anything on.
right. So let me wait till Thursday.
Yeah.
When you.
It won't make any difference. I think I'll leave it on. I just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
I like to know where people have got stuff.
Yeah.
And it gives me that kind of broad overview.
Yeah.
And even the references, it kind of helps with the references because if it highlights the whole reference, it says that reference is right, and I know that it's right.
Okay,
I don't have to worry and check it because
Yeah.
I don't really check references. I'm open to doing.
Yeah.
But if it shows me the reference, it'll show it. I think in the same color as if you've got a direct quote. It'll actually say these from the same document. Fuck, perfect.
Yeah.
He's actually referenced it exactly right.
Yeah.
And the reference being, if it's all red, it means that you've either copied the reference, which is fine, straight from Google Scholar, or you've just done it through the sifting process that we use in the library, which means it'll be right.
Yeah.
If if you have changed it, I can still check whether it's actually correct. It's usually correct anyway. But people sometimes get references wrong and they actually don't do enough.
Yeah.
They don't put enough
That's
detail
right,
in.
like page number or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
right.
That's quite-
So,
I even picked up my name. I'm doing well.
right. I love the fact that Turnitin will find out almost everything in the world.
But it's annoying.
It is a bit annoying for you when you get here or see 25%, but just be comfortable. We're told 25% is normal, but over 25%, you have to check it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I've got my kids using it at school, so they love it too.
Yeah.
See you next week. Thanks, Ted.
No worries.